Welcome back to Accented Dialogues in Diaspora, presented by DVAN or the Diasporic Vietnamese Artist Network. Can we get some love in the chat for our in-house DJ Puzzle? That's PU22L3. How are you doing tonight, Puzzle?
Doing good, man. We be chilling out
Yeah,
here in New Orleans. How you doing?
I'm chilling out here in the Yay area.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have bet against the team wearing red on Lunar New Year, though. I'll tell you that.
Oh man. I was gonna say, dang, dang, Niner gang, dang, dang.
hmm But welcome back. It's always good to have you, Puzzle.
Good to see you, man. I'll check y'all later.
For sure. So again, welcome to all of our guests here today in the Zoom to Accented Dialogues in Diaspora. Just to reintroduce myself, my name is Philip Nguyen. I'm one of the co-hosts for tonight's show. I teach ethnic studies, Asian American studies at San Francisco and San Jose State. I've been a part of DVAN since my time as a graduate student, reading the Diacritics blog, making sure that I was kept up to date with all the Vietnamese American, Southeast Asian American literature that was coming out, all the different poetry readings and events that DVAN was hosting. And so I have this really distinct honor, before we get started with the show, to introduce the Diasporic Vietnamese Artist Network, which is the producer for Accented, this program, right? So DVAN believes that the stories and aesthetics of a thriving Vietnamese diaspora can unite our global community. Our mission is to foster diasporic Vietnamese and Southeast Asian literary voices. DVAN promotes nonfiction, fiction, and poetry to empower artists in the diaspora and inspire understanding and dialogue within our community and with others. We champion our complex and diverse stories for future generations as we are refugees, immigrants, survivors, and their descendants, and know that our stories must be heard. And so for more information about DVAN, y'all can check out dvan.org or on Instagram or Facebook at weare_DVAN. This show, Accented Dialogues in Diaspora, initially emerged during the pandemic to provide this intimate space for us to facilitate collaboration and connection between our community members, Vietnamese, Southeast Asian culture producers, artists, writers, movie directors, uh, dancers to gather in conversations about their work, their stories, their passions, their inspirations, and what they have been generally up to, as we think about how we formulate or configure our community. And so now this is our 35th show, and going on our fourth year. We've been able to keep the show going with the support of so many of you, even if this is your first time or if this is your second, third, fourth, or 35th time with us here tonight virtually. I also want to take this opportunity to share that there will be a survey for y'all to fill out at the end of the show that we'll screen share. There's a QR code that I'll share with y'all. And for us to be able to continue supporting the show and hosting it, we really do want your feedback and need your feedback so that we can continue to invite such amazing guests and host this community space for folks to gather from wherever they're at in the diaspora. So again, thank y'all so much, and be sure to follow DVAN on all of our social medias to stay up to date. I also now have the distinguished honor to introduce the co-hosts for Accented Dialogues in Diaspora, Mr. Viet Thanh Nguyen, whose novel The Sympathizer won the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction and numerous other awards. His most recent publication is A Man of Two Faces, a memoir, a history, and memorial. His other books are the sequel to The Sympathizer, The Committed, a short story collection, The Refugees, Nothing Ever Dies, Vietnam and the Memory of War, which was a finalist for the National Book Award in Nonfiction and the National Book Critics Circle Award in General Nonfiction, as well as Race and Resistance, Literature and Politics in Asian America. He's also published Chicken of the Sea, a children's book written in collaboration with his son, Ellison. He is a university professor at the University of Southern California, a recipient of fellowships from the Guggenheim and MacArthur Foundations. He is also the editor of The Displaced, Refugee Writers on Refugee Lives, the forthcoming children's book, Simone, illustrated by Minnie Phan, and is one of the co-founders for the Diasporic Vietnamese Artist Network. Welcome back, Viet.
Hi, Philip. Such a pleasure to be back here with you and DJ Puzzle and our two special guests tonight. The first of whom is Krysada Phounsiri, a Lao American award-winning poet, professional dancer, optical engineer, and photographer. We're going to have to talk about how all those different things have come together. He graduated from my alma mater at UC Berkeley with a physics and astrophysics double major. He minored in creative writing with a focus in poetry. His poetry has been featured in various publications like the Journal of Southeast Asian American Education, SEARAC 40 and Forward, and San Diego Poetry Together Anthology. He's authored 2 poetry books, Dance Among Elephants 2015 and Every Passing Minute 2020. Plus, he's had a very interesting career with a crew that we're going to learn more about in just a little bit. How you doing, Krysada?
Hey everyone, glad to be here. Sabaidi to all the folks out there, and yeah, really happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Really looking forward to our conversation with you and with our next guest, Saymoukda Duangphouxay Vongsay, who is a Lao American poet and playwright. She is the author of the children's book, When Everything Was Everything, from 2018, and is best known for her Kung Fu Zombies play cycle. Her work has been presented by the Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center, Theater Mu, Walking Shadow Theater Company, and elsewhere. Recently, she's been a writer in residence at the residencies at Hedgebrook and at Jurassic, the latter one by invitation of our very own Diasporic Vietnamese Artists Network. Saymoukda, greetings. Glad to have you with us.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Wow, I get to talk to one of my heroes. Yeah,
Philip? Yeah, absolutely. He's my hero too.
yeah, it's Asian American Studies.
Okay, so
Shout
you
out.
both identify as Lao American. This was in the biographies that you sent to us, and I'm really curious about that because with this show we haven't had an opportunity yet to focus purely a whole episode purely on Laos or Lao Americans or the Lao diaspora. So it's so great that we can have the two of you here, especially since you self-identify as Lao American. So many complicated things to talk about. But let's start with this, which is what is it like to be a Lao American artist? I'm sure you have different responses to that, but I just want to start with that really open-ended question. We'll start with Krysada. What is it like to be a Lao American artist?
Um, I think being a Lao American artist is a beautiful play between learning how to relax and learning how to embrace the chaos. So we're very flavorful in our approach. We got a lot of flavor, quite raw, quite curious, but can't take everything too seriously. There's like a balance in our lives and how we create our work. So there's tension there, but
Give me an example of this tension and give me an example of this spiciness that you're talking about.
if you're talking about food, or my dance style, so tamakung or papaya salad is our beautiful spicy dish. But it's one of the spiciest food you can have in Southeast Asia, and I think the way I dance is, I'd say, full of fire and spice, I would say. But then you have but I think for me it's like taking foundation and then adding my own flavor into whatever work I do is the most Lao thing I could say.
Hopefully we'll get a little glimpse later of the dancing that you have done. But Saymoukda, what does it mean for you to be a Lao American artist?
I think there's a lot of responsibility of being to be a Lao American artist. One of the first things is you have to constantly introduce yourself to people, because I know that for myself, to 90-ish% of people that I meet, they don't know who Lao people are. So like there's this constant, yeah, we are from a landlocked country, and then you do your whole spiel, right? Which is fine and dandy, but this is why I choose to, highlight and amplify Lao people through theater, just because it's easier to give people a massive group of people to tell people one time. You don't have to like keep repeating yourself. But one thing that's difficult for us as Lao artists is that there aren't many of us out there. And if we are out there, it's so important for us to identify as Lao American artists as a way to find connections and a way to create a support network for each other. I don't think we have had that for a long time. So it means everything to me, and I never not identify as Lao. In any chance I get, I always tell people I'm Lao. And the other great thing, which I think this is going to sound silly, but when you are a Lao American artist, you get to be the first of many things, like automatically, you know, like first Lao water skier, first Lao American b-boy poet model physicist, like, you know what I mean? So that's the plus side.
I mean, but what you've both said is I think very familiar to a lot of us, because when we talk about any of these groups that have been identified as a part of Southeast Asia, or our corner of Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, we've all gone through that, right? This idea that when the first of the artists and the writers and so on of each of these communities started to emerge, they all faced this issue of who are you? Explain your country, explain your history. And we've all had to introduce ourselves and wrestled with the question of how much to explain and wrestled with the question of how to balance these different needs of being a part of a community and also yet giving into our full spice level, whatever that happens to be. And is that frustrating for you at this point? Because, you know, when we talk about these particular countries, you know, Vietnamese American writers have become much more visible. We have visible Cambodian American and Lao American, I'm sorry, Cambodian American and Hmong American writers and artists. It seems like out of all these populations, Laotian Americans are the ones who are at this point least visible or least known, at least to people outside of the Lao American community.
Yeah. It's like Binley said, right? Lao people are so sabai. We're so relaxed that sometimes we don't know that we should take up space, or we don't know that we have permission to take up space, not just with like our voice or our bodies, but like even with our names, like our names take up a lot of space. Our names are like hella long, you know? I've not met a Lao person whose name was like really short. That's how you know your people. You're like, oh, your name is long, you must be Lao. And it's true. But I think for many people in our community, I've said this before, is that we have these wounds that have not even begun to heal, right? Let alone scab. And so when you're not at that point, you don't feel like you are equipped or ready to share your stories. And I think like for me and Binley as artists, we're always trying to get people to take up space in the ways that they know how. He does it way much more fashionably. And I just try to be more like you, Binley.
No, I don't think so. I think you're doing something in a very powerful and beautiful way. You mentioned frustration. I think there is a frustration. I think when I was young, or like even like very long time ago, I always said like, damn, we're a minority of a minority. Like I always have to tell people I'm in between Thailand and Vietnam in terms of geography, right? It was always like, they were like, even to this day, even like a week ago. So this hasn't stopped. It hasn't angered me. It just motivates me to say, hey, my work is still not done. So everywhere I go, as Mook said, we need to be unapologetically Lao and Lao American in everything that we do. And that makes me proud. Everywhere I go, there's no hesitation. Like, I'll just let everybody know where I'm from and the work I do and the passion that I have. So it's still a mission, and there's no right or wrong way, which is why even between us two, there's a diverse amount of body of work and talent in between. So
yeah, and I know that we were talking about it in the green room earlier, but there is a connection between the two of y'all too. I know earlier when I typed in, when I Googled Lao American writers / artists, like y'all two were some of the first people to come up. And so trailblazers in that sort of sense. But I want to kind of emphasize this point on community. Like what has it been like to try and connect with the folks in the community? Or can you talk a little bit more about the ways that you foster that community for maybe upcoming Lao American or Southeast Asian artists, writers, poets, b-boys, dancers, anything like that in diaspora? Yeah.
I could talk a little bit more about how the Lao American Writers Summit started. This was way back in 2009. It was co-led by myself, Brian Tawara, Chinita Peng Dara, and also Katsi Villapon. And we're all writers. but we do different mediums. I mean, technically, I guess we're all poets too. But anyway, we just felt like we don't get to have our own space, right? We're often invited to be in Pan-Asian spaces, which I think is terrific, but we haven't been able to create a space for ourselves. When that happens, it's so beautiful because there aren't any asterisks, there's not much you have to explain to one another. Like people just get it, you know. So what we did was we found funding from, you know, we got grants and we were able to fly in like 30 people into Minneapolis. And for one weekend, we convened and we like taught each other things. We talked, we drank Heineken, we like chain smoked, you know, and then we talked about what poetry meant to us or like what music meant to us. And it was a group that was more than just writers. There were people who were in theater, people who were actors, people who were musicians, like anybody who was a story maker. We wanted to get to know each other. And to this day, I think this network of people, we are still talking to each other and we're still collaborating. And even Binley organized one of the summits in San Diego, and it was beautiful. You could talk more about that because I couldn't go.
Yeah, I also want to ask you too, Krysada, about, you know, Satu Press and the space that you've been able to carve out there through your publishing too.
Yeah, so yeah, the Lao American Writer Summit was a really powerful start to what I would say like an early Lao American Renaissance. So like there was you know, shout outs to Sachadam literary group as well. There was a lot of groups before us, but it all came from the same lineage of people. And then when I wanted to jump into the scene in terms of putting my writing work out there, I was always doing Lao community work growing up. But as a writer, I still wanted to connect more with community, especially after Cal, even during and after Cal. And one of the summits I went to, that was when I got pretty much down with Satu Press, founded by Nal. And he's also the founder and author with Satu Press. I was approaching one of the Lao American really dope documentary filmmaker named Tavisuk. I watched one of his documentaries, Nerakun, and I met him at Berkeley, and I asked him, hey, how can I further connect with folks around the States, pretty much, you know, before social media. I wrote him an email. He connected me to Brian Talwara, and then through Brian, I met Nal. And during that time, I was already writing my manuscript for my first book. And it debuted at the Lao American Writer Summit in 2014, 2015. That was my first book, and really what helped jump the next wave of like the next Lao American events. And it motivated me so much that I voted for San Diego to be the next spot. And there was only 2 votes and everyone else had 1 vote from other cities. So we just we took it on to San Diego. So it was a tall task. And trying to connect folks at that time in terms of the diverse amount of artists we had, from writers, musicians, dancers, artists, sculpture artists, all of that. It's trying to bring people out the woodwork, trying to bring people out of I wouldn't say hiding spaces, but bringing them into platforms that are more visible and more places where we're proud to share our work. And I think through that, I think a lot more folks were motivated and inspired to express their art and their community work in a place where we felt invisible in our own circles. But coming together, I think really set it off. And I think, you know, the rest is history for the next few years. So it was difficult, still is, to motivate folks. But I think our work is to also, you know, try to inspire and bring people out. So
I'm so glad you brought up The Betrayal of Narracun, because I've actually taught that documentary every time I teach my class on the Vietnam War to undergraduates. I mean, the class is about the Vietnam War, but it also includes Laos and Cambodia and the Hmong. It's such an amazing documentary. And it reminds me of the fact that, in fact, there have been precedents for Lao American creatives, from The Betrayal of Narracun to the author T.C. Huo, who I read like 20 years ago, and he published 2 novels in English, and then I don't know what happened to him. So there have been these figures, and in the past. So it's not as if the two of you are the very first, or even Brian Talwara or some of the other names that you mentioned, but it seems like it's been hard to get critical mass going. So the Lao American Summit has been crucial for that. And it reminds me of Diasporic Vietnamese Artist Network. Our origins were as students in the 1990s, and it's taken a long time to achieve a critical mass. I mean, what is the challenge for Lao American artists in terms of getting that critical mass together? Is it a demographic issue, or is it lack of interest from the Lao American community? What do you think is in the way right now?
Would you like to go first, or?
Yeah, I could talk. I think there's so many factors. I think for one, people are still trying to heal. They're still worried about what to put on the table. They're still worried about like all these other things that they feel participating in the arts is a luxury. And then I think part of it too is historically we have not been invited into a lot of different types of spaces. Like American theater hasn't historically been inviting Lao American people as audience members. They certainly haven't been cultivating Lao Americans as artists, right? As performers, as actors, at least not intentionally. And then I think another reason too is the type of art form that Binley and I make. You know, Binley does spoken word poetry, he does poetry, he's a b-boy. And then I do very American theater. Our communities have a very different understanding of what theater looks like, because we have centuries, we have like that spans centuries, like this history of Lao theater that includes dance and mask wearing, and like I think a majority of it is Jataka tales, which is like Buddhist origin stories, but still, you know, people are bringing food and they're like throwing things at each other, or they're like talking to the performers. So there's like a call and response, but that doesn't necessarily happen with American theater. And so these spaces still feel very foreign to members of our community, but people love the arts. There are artists in our community. There are people who do traditional dance and people who love traditional song. Any given month, you could have a whole bunch of aunties sponsoring a singer from Laos to come to Minnesota to do like a concert, right? Like, we love it. I just don't know. I mean, I think the best thing that Binley and I could do as artists is to just put our work out there, amplify our community stories, and hopefully inspire people to like want to tell their own stories and want to do it in better ways. You know, I love it when someone says, I can do better than you. And I'm like, yes, go do it.
Our generation makes it such that like me and Saymoukda's generation, right? We came to America, we're in-betweeners, right? You could call it the 1.2s, the 1.3s, the 1.5 generation. But like we were the middle link between ushering in our parents and our elders from Laos, transitioning, translating, and trying to live life. And then the generation after us who have already been here, lived here. Their parents can speak English, their parents can advocate for them, right? But we had to do all that in the middle on top of trying to express ourselves. It must be in our DNA, but I think we just love creating and love expressing ourselves. The difficulty in trying to find Lao American artists is, in terms of this generation, was, just either lack of visibility again, right? This is way before social media. And I think where I come from, I think a lot of people I grew up with had the realities of lacking financial resources, living in the hood, joining gangs, just being a refugee, being an immigrant, living through that, and having our parents just wanting us to survive. Those are the challenges. I mean, there are folks, I mean, we say how proud we are being Lao. There are folks that they're proud, but they have realities in front of them, right? Where they can't create, and there's nothing that they could even think of in terms of what to create or how to be an artist. Maybe being a rapper, that was one of the, or being like into hip hop, right? That was one of the most accessible things given our communities with other communities of color, right? But I think pushing that narrative you know, it's great that we could be the first. We don't want to be the last. We want to have millions more. And it's pushing these types of events and pushing our work and making sure it's fatiguing at times, right? It's tiring, but the work isn't done. And I think that's what keeps us going to continue to push and
I
bring.
also I want to call out outsiders, because I think one of the reasons why so many of our people in the community do not tell their own stories is because outsiders keep wanting to tell our stories for us, right? These are people who are like academics or researchers or like just plain out outsiders who want to take Lao stories and then like misinterpret it in a very haphazard way. And when that happens, we feel like we are not the ones who are equipped to tell that story, because this other person, this white person who's like, you know, getting all the resources and funding and like support gets to do that. And so there's also that too as a barrier. And I think it's just messed up because we've been here for nearly 5 decades. And I think we need to be the ones now that receives that type of support. And I think we need to just take charge and take up all the space and all the resources.
Yeah, and I think that the building of an artistic community is really important to that. So I love this idea that you don't want to be the first and you don't want to be the last. And that's very much the spirit of, you know, the Diasporic Vietnamese Artists Network too. But Krysada, I want to focus on the fact that, you know, you went to Berkeley, my alma mater, and I think you given everything you said about the necessity of survival and pragmatism and everything, but you seem to have gone into overdrive by doubling in physics and astrophysics, which seems to be kind of redundant from an outsider's point of view. But you also put in some creative writing, and of course, eventually you became a dancer. I just want to talk more about that part of your life before we get to your poetry as well. So maybe you can tell us about being a part of the Jabberwockies, which means that I probably saw you without realizing it way back when, because obviously we never saw the faces of the individual Jabberwockies dancers. And I have to say, you know, when I wrote my novel, The Committed, at the very end of The Committed, there's one photograph in the book, and it's a photograph of a Vietnamese, the French march in Paris. And at the front rank of these protesters who are marching for racial justice and so on, 3 young Vietnamese Frenchmen wearing white masks.
Ooh.
And I was thinking very specifically about the Jabberwockies as well. So tell us more about this. Tell us about you as a dancer and how you got involved with the Jabberwockies.
Cool. So quick backstory. I started dancing, doing Lao dancing when I was really young, maybe like 5, 6 years old, when we were coming here, just doing Lao community dances at our temples in the Lao New Year. So that was like my first exposure to just dance in general, traditional Lao dancing. Then I started liking Michael Jackson. You know, Michael Jackson was a big inspiration to me. So learning, just everyone's like, oh, do Michael Jackson dances. And I was just like learning it. And then through elementary school, I was also dancing a lot of freestyle, a lot of house party dances, just a lot of freestyle dances. So I always loved dancing, and I always started off as a dancer, but I didn't really officially start breaking until I was 13, 14. It was December 2001. So I've been a dancer for quite a long time, probably now over 20 years. Going into Cal, I had no path in terms of someone to aspire to or a major to think about. But I just love physics. I always looked up to the stars, always wanted to understand life and reality in a way that I couldn't understand. And I thought that was also beautiful, which is why I did astrophysics first. And then one of my buddies, my partner in crime, who we always studied together, we're like, hey, why don't we just do a double? Because it's almost, it's just extra classes, extra labs, and we both love physics. I felt like an idiot, to be honest. I didn't feel like I was the brightest person, but I love learning about that. And then after that, I actually wanted to triple major in poetry. There just wasn't a creative writing major for writing. So I did poetry for the people, and I did the program at Cal, and got the minor in poetry. With Jabberwockies, it was strange because growing up in San Diego, so Jabberwockies was created in San Diego in terms of they came from different parts of California and Vegas, but they came together as a crew in San Diego. I think it was like Culture Shock Dance Studio. So they became a crew there. So I knew the B-boys, I knew the breakers that was in Java. They saw us growing up, me and my little brother. And I think it was like 2010, 2011. I was in my first job, just fresh out of graduation, just trying to make a living. You know, the recession and all that was going on. And I was working for a year, but they needed swings. They needed people to help support them, because after they got, you know, their fame and everything that they deserved in a great way, they got a show in Vegas. But dancing to that caliber is not sustainable, right? You need people to rotate, because people are getting injured, and they're dancers. They put in 100%. They put in all the effort. It's their love and soul, right? So they needed help, and they were like, hey, one of the b-boys, or one of the dancers in Java, b-boy Rainin, he was like, hey, I know two brothers in San Diego. They're really dope. I think they might be down to audition for the Vegas show. And long story short, yeah, we auditioned. I quit my job because I was like, I think I only have one chance at this. I mainly went for my little brother. He really loved, you know, he really wanted to be out there. And I just wanted to support him, but I also wanted to dance professionally as well. So we did the Jabberwocky's Muse IC show, and I found the mask. So this is the Jabberwocky's Muse IC show. It was at the Monte Carlo. Now it's called the MGM. So that was also the time that Jabberwockies and Super Crew did stuff together. So I did all the breaking and solos. This is a ninja mask. We had to jump over people, flip over people, do power moves, and yeah. I had a beautiful time, danced there for a year, a little over a year, and came back to San Diego. One of the best times I've had as a professional dancer.
Well, I just loved watching Jabberwockies way back then. Brings back all this nostalgia. We have a clip, actually, I believe, that Philip is going to show.
It's hype. It's hype.
All right, that wasn't Jabberwockies, but that was you. That was awesome. I love that. You're not
Tenacity of the
shy.
ancient.
You're not shy. Okay, you can get up in front of an audience. Does that help you when you're reading your poetry in front of an audience?
All of my art makes me feel different kind of jitters, to be honest. So I'm always nervous, I would say, in terms of I want to make sure that I do a great job no matter what, but also I don't seek perfection, so I leave it up to whatever happens, right? I prepare, but I also don't care what happens, if I do bad or if I do well. But of course, there's always a level of jitters. Yeah. Sorry, was that
yeah. I mean, like, I think for both of y'all, right, like the way in which, I mean, I'm thinking about the Jabberwocky's mask, right? And oftentimes when we think about like theater too, the symbol is usually like a mask, like to be a thespian, right? And I'm also thinking, Saymoukda, about what you're mentioning earlier about you said the Jataka tales, right? So like this very like ancient wisdom and ancient knowledge that I think I would say was bestowed upon us by the ancestors, right? I want to ask you, how do you get from interpreting your interpretation or analysis of something like the Jataka tales, right? Which is also very cultural in the way that it's embedded in Lao culture, right? To writing about kung fu zombies and cannibals, which is something that we might not necessarily associate with, Buddhism or that way of life, so to say.
Oh, I didn't want to talk about me. I want to see more of Binley dancing.
Start a hyphy circle right now.
It's so hot. Just kidding. Well, I mean, I grew up with Lao fantasy stories. Like my dad told me a lot of stories about wizards and like giants and ogres and things like that. And a lot of the Buddhist stories have characters that are like this. Like they know magic, they can change size, you know, they can transport all these wonderful things. And to me, that's Lao fantasy. That's, you know, I cannot not go into theater and not honor that part of myself. And sometimes it is hard to get produced because people just want like straight plays, like two-handers, you know, two people in the living room over a span of an afternoon arguing about Cupcake or something, right? But it's deeper than Cupcake. It's like trauma. And to me, I feel like I want to bring in all of these parts of myself that I love, which is hip hop and fantasy and sci-fi and horror and comedy and like Golden Girls and Dolly Parton and like Wu-Tang, like, you know, all these things. I just want to create different access points for people to get to know the stories that I want to tell them, which is much deeper. It's deep. It's about colonialism, and it's about imperialism, and it's about consequences of war, you know, and people having to heal and trying to heal. It's about forgiveness and like family and, you know, queerness, like all these things, like hard topics. And even like repatriation, right? Like, what does that mean? You know, you get deported. That's what it is. I don't know why they try to do fancy words like repatriation. It hurts. But yeah, like Kung Fu Zombies was just a vehicle for me to get people from my generation and after to understand our histories and to feel comfortable, to want to have conversations about it. When we did my play back in the summer last year, Kung Fu Zombies Saga, Shaman, Warrior, and Cannibals, it was this 3-hour thing. And I initially thought that people might not want to sit through three hours of zombies doing Kung Fu and fighting cannibals, but they did, they enjoyed it. And one of the most meaningful things that I hear over and over again from members from the Southeast Asian community is that, you know, on the ride home with my dad or with my aunt or with my mom or my cousin, I asked them about what happened to them during the war, or what happened to what was life like before the war disrupted everything. And to me, that means everything. That means more to me than like a theater critic giving it 5 stars or whatever, right? Yeah, I don't know if I would be able to get people to come see a play about war if I didn't call it Kung Fu Zombies versus Cannibals. You know, it's like you trick them in and then you're like, gotcha, now you're gonna learn history. So and humor is so important. I've said this before, it's like when you create a safer space for people to laugh, they feel okay crying in a room with strangers, you know? And I just love that. I love that about theater.
Are the aunties usually with it? I mean, you talked about like the aunties being there at the shows, and I mean, has there been any resistance to your work and the way that you approach your work?
Not really, because I'm kind of I'm a sort of an outlier in many ways, like in the Lao community in Minnesota. I don't necessarily need blessings from the elders to do what I want, just because who are you? You don't pay my bills. No, I did get one auntie who said to me, so Kung Fu Zombies has 2 characters who are monks, right? And just imagine this is post-apocalyptic. The world is littered with zombies. Like 3 billion people died. So there's not a lot of people left on Earth. And the monks, one is Black American. He's a ex-military, but he got stuck in Laos during, you know, when the apocalypse happened, and went to the temples and was able to seek refuge and like find help, and then eventually became a monk, right? And then the other monk is this ex-gangbanger from California who was deported, right? In my world, Laos and the United States have a repatriation agreement. Anyway, in the play, the 2 monks embrace the protagonist who is going through a really hard, traumatic killing that happened. And the pushback that I got from some of the aunties was monks should not be touching women, right? Like that's a big no-no. Why did you put that in your play? And I said, lady, there are zombies that do kung fu in the play. Like this is all made up. And plus, and I feel like human warmth is so necessary. And when we're in a situation where we can provide that for other people, I think that comes before like dogma or like religion or whatever, right? So I said it to him much nicer than that, but I wasn't like, lady, I didn't do any of that. In my mind, I did that.
I love that response. Number one, you don't pay my bills. That's very important. And number two, it's got zombies and cannibals. We're not in the realm of realism anymore at that point, right? Well, with poetry too, we're not oftentimes in the realm of realism. And I want to hear next from Krysada, who besides being a physicist and a dancer, is also a poet.
Okay, so I wanted to share this poem. It's a poem I took some time and a lot of thought into. It's titled, "A Bomb Does Not Discriminate." A bomb does not discriminate. It detonates. Glass skin does not care what color. A bomb does not discriminate, cares not what's for dinner. Lamb vindaloo curry, sticky rice, ramen noodles, or porridge. Bombs smash past windows, engulfs limbs in dust before the oven warms up. A bomb grasps children by the face, swap beds with iron tombs, feed mouths with fragments of lead, flame and gasoline boiling flesh, just in time for night prayer. A bomb does not discriminate, does not care if a Muslim cries to Allah, or if a Buddhist chants Sadhu in tears, or a Christian sighs Amen at a funeral. The planes still sob, bombs still smash, wiping human tears along with their bodies. It will fall, gash necks open, fry blood in any city, any home, cares not when to explode. Hiroshima, 1975. All of the 1970s in Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16, 2017 in Syria, now Gaza, still counting. Bombs still fly through time, been colorblind for centuries. A bomb does not discriminate. It burns, bites with steel fangs, napalm melts, sings the coming of death, no segregation guaranteed. A bomb does not discriminate, so why do you?
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. When you were reading your poem, it reminds me of some of my own concerns as being someone who left Vietnam, and Vietnam was bombed. And then I'm an American citizen, and we Americans are really good at bombing. It's like one of the best things that we're good at, you know. And obviously your poem is connecting all these different kinds of experiences of different countries, different religions, and so on that have been subjected to bombing of various kinds. And I was reminded of the fact that I've been to Laos, and I've been to the Plain of Jars, and I've driven around and so on. But that was 2010. I don't know how much has changed, but back then there was evidence of bombing still all over the landscape. Have you been back to Laos? And was the poem at least partly inspired by what happened to Laos and the legacies, the ongoing history of the war in Laos?
Yeah, I went back for the first time in 2005. That was my first time since living in America my entire life, pretty much. And then going back, reuniting with family, just embracing the homeland again. Then after that, I went multiple times. When I first wrote this poem, actually, it was inspired by, unfortunately, a different conflict, but it was an interview from someone that was in prison and speaking about bombs in the Middle East, and it was about indiscriminate bombing, and that Syria was the conflict at the time, and it kind of pushed me because learning about my own history and Laos being the most bombed country per capita to this day, it inspired me to think about why am I not writing about this too? Why am I not writing about these unfortunate connections and intersections between different countries that have been bombed? And I did go to Laos. I did go to Siem Quang, the plain of jar sites, for the first time in 2022, and it was quite eerie, but it was also quite maybe full circle is not the right word, but it was like, this is exactly what I needed to see. Because the other times I went back, it was always to reconnect and do creative, work, but just to stand in the land and to have that poem kind of replay in my head as I'm writing it. It was it was quite, how do I say it, like an emotional response. Yeah.
When I went to visit the Plain of Jars, I took a plane from Vientiane, and I was on a small airplane with a lot of Americans, and they were all U.S. Air Force personnel in civilian clothes, and they were there on a voluntary medical mission, as they told me, to help the people of Laos. And I remember I talked to two of them, an enlisted man and an Air Force Academy officer, Air Force Academy graduate who was an officer, and I said, "Do you know, like, the U.S. Air Force bombed this?" Bomb this? And the officer was like, "Yeah, we learned a little bit about that at the academy, but not too much." And the airman, an enlisted man, was like, "No, I never even heard of this." So, in fact, the work is still important. They know that you see the erasure of history going on, even for American Air Force personnel who are returning to the same place that their institution bombed. And then, this issue that Laos was the most bombed country per capita. It's very important to remember that. But I wonder, when all is said and done, whether Gaza will take that title, unfortunately.
Yeah. Right. I mean, at one point, Vietnam was the longest standing war, and then went to Afghanistan. And looking at Gaza now, you kind of wish you kind of thought that we'd get over this at this point. Unfortunately, no. So just praying for all the victims, the
Yeah.
civilians.
All right, Saymoukda, you're next. We're going to hear from you, and then we might have time for one last question before audience questions. So please put your questions into the Q&A for Saymoukda or for Krysada. So Saymoukda, what have you got for us?
Yeah, I have a poem. It's I want to dedicate it to mothers. So it's called Mother's Voices. Mother's voice sounded like warm rain. It sounded like sticky rice steaming in a woven bamboo basket in the morning. It sounded like shoes being kicked off, left foot first, then right foot next, followed by an imbalance, a wobble. Mother's voice sounded like the sink running on a low flow at 4 a.m. to scrub the dust off of her face. Her voices sounded like Pum Puang and Dolly Parton wafting through our screen door to call me back home from the park. Mother's voice sounded like old home butter tubs opening to reveal sompak or fermented badak. Mother's voice also felt, too. It felt like scraps packed tightly into a Kemp's ice cream bucket at the fresh fruit cutting factory. It felt like cracking joints snuck in at the hearing aid assembly line. It felt like 25-cent popsicles melting too soon. I was taught to make the most of these moments, to savor in case I won't get to have it again. Mother's voice smelled too, like Jean Naté after bath splash, slapped and slathered on my skinny arms and legs. It smelled like Dad's Chinese chop chop, an ambiguously racist stir fry concocted from misremembered ingredients listed by Martin Yan every morning through the television. If Yan can cook, so can you. Except my dad couldn't. Mother's voice smelled like depression, like that time we went on a drive in West St. Paul. We stopped at a park. They stayed in the car while brother and I climbed up the slides. I jumped off the swings after I saw her slam the car door. She only stopped crying long enough to direct me. Bury me here when I am dead. In my heart, I said I couldn't. How could I? I'm only 7. She said, when you're older. My mother's voice smelled like steamed buns with not enough hard-boiled egg and too much meat. Meat is love, she'd say. How can there be too much love? Bite into it. Savor. Take your time, all the time you need, because you might not get to have it again. Thank you.
Big snaps, big snaps. It cuts. You said earlier, like, there are wounds that have not yet scabbed.
Yeah.
And I may not be the one that was wounded, but I feel it, And I think a lot of your work speaks to this experience, this transgenerational experience of being like a child of refugees, immigrants, having to negotiate what that identity is like. I know also, Saymoukda, that your poetry collection / poem itself, When Everything Was Everything, was turned into a kid's book, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I mean, what is I mean, we're talking about the things that are passed on to us. Then what is it? I mean, pitching this question to you that we might be able to hope to pass on to the next generation, or what you hope to, at least in the kids' book and then in your work.
I mean, when I wrote the poem, I was actually ready to give up poetry because I wasn't getting paid or published. And I wrote the poem and performed it, one time at an open mic, and people loved it. And then I was invited to another open mic, and then it kept going on. And then several years passed, and a publisher approached me to see if I would like to see this breathe as a children's book. And I didn't know what that meant, because I was like, what do you mean? It's a poem. I don't get it. But he had a vision for it, and I agreed. And I loved the idea because I know people in my community do not go to open mics or coffee shops and poetry readings, right? But I think because when it's a book, it becomes more accessible. They can order it on Amazon or find it at the library, And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to make a book. One of the best things I hear is little kids telling me that, wow, I didn't know my mom grew up like that too. And even people in my generation tell me, I'm so happy that you were not ashamed to talk about growing up on food stamps, or that your parents work under the table, or that they had third shift jobs, or that you helped them pick cucumbers at the cucumber field. And I was like, yeah, it's all part of who we are. It's about resilience and like healing. And then, there's some pain too. Like, it's okay to live all of this. So I'm hoping that the work that I make will just make people feel empowered to take up space in their own way.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Saymoukda, and to you too, Krysada. For both of y'all for joining us tonight. Tonight's theme is Memory as Rebellion, showcasing Lao American artists. Again, it's the first time that we have been able to showcase Lao American artists here on Accented. We're going to do a little bit of a transition from our roundtable conversation into the Q&A. So for all the folks that are out there listening to us, joining us virtually, we thank you for sticking with us. And if y'all have any questions, to please pop them in the chat. I'm gonna start with one, just like maybe a low key one, but also that might have a little bit more depth. I think both of y'all in your poems or poetry, or you mentioned sticky rice a couple times so far. I want to ask you, what's y'all's favorite thing to eat with sticky rice? Start off with that, and then we'll go to the audience Q&A. But I'll pass to you first. Saymoukda.
I think anything that's potent and
Oh, you got to be specific though. This is
okay.
are we talking about, yeah.
Anything that you wouldn't find in a Lao restaurant that's for white people.
Oh.
So like the stuff that our aunties would make, where it's like, I think you probably wouldn't find gang no mai, which is a bamboo soup, and sometimes it has snails in it. Like, I love snails. We used to go forage for snails at the local lake, and white people would be jogging and like, what are they doing? Foraging for food. So gang no mai is what I love eating with sticky rice.
Can I just say that I also have a friend who's Vietnamese and a refugee, and her family settled in Echo Park, Los Angeles, in the 70s, and the women went to Echo Park Lake and reaped the lotuses that grew there.
Yes.
Until the LAPD intervened. Okay. But the point is, like you were saying, white people are looking at you guys doing this, and now it's like white hipsters who forage.
Yeah, they have chickens in their
backyard. You dumpster dive, all this kind of stuff that the refugees did out of necessity.
Yeah.
They came. It's crazy.
We're trendsetters. We're thought makers.
Yeah, so sticky rice for me would be Saywa. I just love like Lao sausage. But my favorite is actually all the spicy sauces. So we call it gel, right? Gel is just the sauce you dip your sticky rice into various gels. There's like a luang prabang version of gel. It's with like mak tua nao and other heavy spices. There's gel. What else? Saymoukda, help me out. Gel.
Mushroom gel,
There's mushroom gel. There's
tomato gel. You can make anything into a gel. You just gotta like bang it in a mortar with garlic and
there you go. Thank you.
pepper.
Yeah. So just so much gel, like just sticky rice with that. I'll eat it all day. And then yeah, saiwo as well. It has to be really good saiwo.
I didn't have gel until I went to Luang Prabang, and Luang Prabang was the first time I ever actually had Lao food that I knew was Lao food.
Yeah.
So here in the United States, before we get to the audience questions, here in the United States, I've heard that sometimes Lao food is disguised in restaurants that are not calling themselves Lao restaurants. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think a lot of Lao people, when we came here, wanted to open businesses and felt that if Americans knew it was Lao, because, we're refugees, the connotation of refugee. So they were like, let's just call ourselves Thai. And then so a lot of Thai restaurants are really run by Lao people.
Yeah, you see a lot of Thai Lao restaurants, especially here in the Bay too. I mean,
yeah,
because
what I loved in recent times, and I would say it really stemmed a lot even from the Lao American Writer Summit, which is the Lao food movement, which had its own thing. But when we reached critical mass, it was like, no, we're gonna call this Lao food. Like we should really be out there and say it unapologetically that this is Lao food. And I think a lot of current generation and new generation chefs that have been really putting in the work, they're definitely saying now this is Lao food. This is a Lao dish. This is how we do it. They're able to speak on the history of it. So it's been good now. But yes, historically, for many decades, a lot of Thai restaurants are run by Lao folks.
And going to the point of you need to take up space. That's exactly it, right? I mean, part of the way that different kinds of so-called minorities in the United States have become visible is through real estate. You open so-called ethnic shops. You put your language up there. You put your name up there, and people they're going to see it. They're just going to have to confront it. And so that has been unfortunate that sort of the Lao cuisine has been hidden under another label. So yeah, take up the space, take up the visual space. It's so crucial. Okay, Philip, what's the first question we're gonna get out of the Q&A?
One of the questions is, y'all got a favorite jail recipe? So we got a little bit on it. I don't think we got specific into the recipes yet, but
I don't know how to cook Lao food. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm a terrible cook. I'm very good at flavoring stuff, but I'm terrible at making stuff. Just flavoring it though. But whoever asked that, hit me up. I could direct you to many dope, very able chefs that can support you on that.
And it's got to be Lao spicy, a level of Lao spicy for sure.
Yeah.
Right. If it doesn't cleanse your colon, it's not Lao.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm getting ulcers just thinking about it. We got a question in the chat. In my Southeast Asian studies class, we talk about the idea of memory and the abstract ideas of home and identity. Do y'all both find that these concepts inform and inspire your writing and or other art forms? Memory and the abstract idea of home and identity.
You know what's wild? When I was young, one of the ways that I knew I needed to protect myself from retaliation from the Lao government, if they ever found out about the things I was saying about them, was that I needed to become an American citizen. So, it's complicated. Like I have a complicated relationship with the United States because of what happened to us. And then what continues to happen to us to this day, right? So, yeah, I don't know if I have anything more to share other than that.
So to really touch on that subject, it is a very real thing that I want to highlight in the Lao American community, which is a lot of our elders are constantly in fear of being watched or being spied upon. It's very hard for them to speak upon homeland and memories without either unearthing traumas or in fear that there are people that are around in the Lao parties that are listening and can report, right? So it is a fear, and I think it is also the reason why when we talk about memories as rebellion or memories or the abstract feeling of home, for us, it's us trying to first of all, learn and realize this, because we feel so lost in two worlds, right? Trying to fit into one, trying to understand where our past came from. And I think it really does inspire the work that I do in all the art avenues, I would say, because one of it is a form of resistance. It is true, like, hey, some people are watching in Laos, right? And you have to really think about what you're writing about, but you also have to come at it in a form of one form of resistance, but also from a place of love, where you have to just write your truths. And I think that's the most important thing when you think about home. What is home to you? And not just physically, but also where is that place? Because a lot of us are in constant search of that. And then when you go to memory, I think for us too, it's the responsibility of writing our family's memories, writing about our personal memories and our stories, because we mentioned this earlier, right? Someone else is going to write for us. And as June Jordan used to say, like, write or be written. So we have to take upon that that responsibility to always document those memories and then turn it into something dope, you know, as a poem, as an art, as a play, as a film, you know, whatever it can be. And I think those stories, there's never enough. We need a lot more. We need so much more in all different genres.
Mm.
For sure.
Some would call it a narrative plenitude, you know. We have a question from Ryan Sal in the chat in regards to the question of identifying as Lao artists. When y'all feel the need to explain yourself, is it split between a lack of visibility for Laotians and the sometimes frowned upon career path of an artist in a traditional Asian sense? So do you identify more as Lao or Laotian, or more as an artist? Or are those identities inseparable in describing who you are?
I identify as Lao because I'm ethnic Lao. I'm also part Akha from my dad's side. And I'm very proud of it. I have never not been proud. I'm also fortunate that I was surrounded by artists. My dad is a musician and he plays guitar. He also like draws. You know, right now he's a mechanical designer. He designs windmills. It's like so weird. Like, why are you designing windmills? But he also builds things with his hands. And my mom is a culinary artist. Like, she used to, you know, come up with recipes all the time. I had aunts who were dancers and people who were writers, and you know, they also did visual art. So I was very fortunate. There weren't any expectations for me growing up. It was just, well, I guess there was, because it was, don't get pregnant, don't join a gang, don't sell drugs, like, don't shame us in those ways, but you can shame us in other ways. Like, you could go do other things. It doesn't matter. So I didn't have, I guess expectations were low for me growing up, I guess. So no one had expected me to be a doctor or a lawyer. They were just happy that I was getting C's and above.
What about you, Krysada, in San Diego?
The question was, is my identity as a Lao human being and an artist inseparable? And also, what was the first part about visibility?
Yeah, when you feel like you need to explain yourself, is it split between a lack of visibility for Lao folks and the sometimes frowned upon career path of an artist? Do you identify more as Lao or as an artist, or are those two identities inseparable in describing who you are?
I think they're absolutely inseparable. I think growing up, I was also always challenged by not just our own community folks on what I did and everything I did creatively, but also challenged even outside of the community about the things I've done. So I think early on, I really felt like I had to figure out a way to nurture my curiosity as a human being, but also to try to hold it down with family, because I saw the difficulties in our communities and even within the household of our family just trying to survive. So I needed to figure out, how can I somehow take care of them, but also how can I protect the love that I have in terms of creating the things that I wanted. So I think that's quite inseparable. And I think the expectation was more about having some control or ownership about my path, right? So it was always going to be questioned no matter what. The whole idea of like, you know, go to Berkeley or go to college. First of all, I didn't even know about Berkeley when I first applied, right? I had like no guidance, but it was more about, hey, I need to do something so I could bring it back and take care. But also, it was also like, I see that nobody's really talking about Lao or like our issues or any artists, or there's not a lot of that. So I was like, I got to do it because not just me, but a lot of other people in my circles, like we just had to put ourselves on the map. So I think it's inseparable at all times. I always explain both.
Yeah, there wasn't there like a bill that was trying to get passed. They were trying to do a curriculum that had like Lao, no, I'm sorry, Viet, Khmer, and Hmong.
Yeah, the ethnic studies monocurriculum.
Yes, and Laotians were like left out, and we were like, why? So
Yeah, we did
like our own people do it to us too. Like,
yeah.
don't stop, don't do that.
Yeah, we did a whole movement in California, and
Yeah.
it went all the way to the pretty much to the governor's desk, and it got vetoed. And I understand there's a lot of challenges in the lawmaking front and the curriculum front, but we definitely fought for it. So it's like, you know, like now people got time to really challenge those narratives, right? Yeah, that was an effort, and I love being a part of that. So.
We've also got two questions from Aaron Lowry and Kim Din Pham, who want to ask y'all about your transnational connections, or whether are you connected with a community back in Laos? What's your perspective on the political situation there? I'm unfamiliar with the political situation there, so I'll leave that to y'all. And then Kim Pham asks, you know, we discussed Lao literature and a national diasporic identity. Are there any epics or historical works that have significantly shaped the collective identity and literature of the Lao people?
Those are
kind of
hard.
blending the two. It's a couple of big ones. Might be, but
I can share a story. I mean, when I was in Laos in 2018, one of the advice that my friend actually, Sangmani Ratsabut, who's participating, he's here watching, he told me, when you go, just lie and don't tell them you're a writer. Don't tell them you're there to do research for your musical or whatever. Just don't say you're a writer. I'm like, what do I say? Like, because I want to ask people questions. He's like, say you work in retail, like you fold clothes at a shop. And I was like, okay. So that was like my secret identity was, you know, that's how I went about it. And I guess that it's because there are still eyes and ears listening and watching. Especially if you are Lao American, right? So there's some of that. But I remember when I was there, I didn't have a sense of I don't know, like people just seemed so content, and I didn't know what to make of it, because you hear stories, you read about things happening in Laos on the news, but everybody just seemed so content and just going about their business. I don't know, what are your thoughts on the politics over there, Binley?
So I think Laos is trying to modernize, and we could think about whether it's like for the better or for worse. It really depends on the perspective, right? So we owe a lot of money. We're a poor country. We're trying to develop. We're trying to figure ourselves out in this geopolitical world. Oftentimes that means a lot of Chinese construction projects, Chinese businesses. I've been there a few times, and you're starting to see a lot more of their presence, which is interesting, right? Because a long time before that, there was a huge, in terms of non-Lao, French, a lot of French presence. So you see this really interesting change over the decades. I will say, so for me, I'm connected with the dance and the hip hop community in Laos. I've taught a lot of workshops, judged a lot of jams. I've worked with some fashion designers in Laos to do fashion photo shoots and to try to like also bring out Lao fashion, but in a modern sense or a more contemporary sense. I also read poetry over there at the U.S. Embassy in Vientiane. like the American Center. I think it was for a while, it was this whole thing about, hey, you know, keep your mouth shut about politics. Don't, you know, don't criticize the Lao government. Don't come here like thinking you'd be, you know, the hot item of coming from America. I have the answers to everything kind of attitude. So that, I think that's why, I mean, I think there's still a lot of conversations to be had. I think the youth right now are really starting to unpack and challenge certain aspects, because I think they're the ones that want to lead the way, right, in terms of modernization when it comes to tech, but also climate sustainability, because it's like their livelihood in Laos that is directly affecting them. So I think Laos is changing really quickly. It's pushing quite fast. And I always want to be a part of it and to somehow contribute. But I also understand that yeah, folks are listening, right? Folks are interested in our thoughts too, as being in America, but also being Lao. I think they're starting to open up a lot more to having Lao Americans come back and connect and do work out there too. So and then the question about, sorry, the second question about the Lao epics. There are a few out there, but I'm definitely not the expert. If you message me, I'll connect you with people. But Sing Sai is one of a really good Lao story and epic that a lot of Lao folks know about. So,
okay, so the last question for the two of you is from our audience member Randy Stratton, who wants to know, what are the cool Lao kids listening to and reading these days? He didn't specify, but I assume that could be anywhere from Laos to the United States. Who are the cool kids and what are they listening to and reading to?
I don't know. I don't hang out with cool kids. I hang out with a bunch of degenerates. So I don't know. Binley's a cool kid. What do y'all listen to?
I think I'm also a degenerate. I feel like an outsider because I love my own form of music in all different flavors. But there's a lot of new artists coming out from Laos, like Din La Palm, Zamio, just a bunch of others. But there's a concert coming up. It's called Sabaidi Fest. If you go to their IG, you'll find a lot of amazing artists, not just from Laos, but from Southeast Asia in general. I say those are the cool kids because we're a little older now. So, you know, again, we have our own forms of music. And yeah, it's quite an interesting time actually for Lao music in Laos. For Lao Americans, it has historically been hip hop and rap. So a lot of dope Lao artists here too. So
you know what?
Dope.
You're both kids to me. So everybody's a kid to somebody else, all right? So all relative at this point. Okay, Philip, you're a kid to me. What's happening?
I'm
Next.
definitely a kid, dear Juby. We at Accented, we would love to get your support as we wrap on up our conversation tonight with the wonderful Saymoukda and Krysada. Please, if you could take a moment to scan this QR code that's on the showing on the screen right now, and let us know what you thought about tonight's show. Give us some feedback, maybe even suggest some future Lao American artists, writers, poets, b-boy dancers that we can feature here on Accented. That would be great. And it would really help us continue to amplify and uplift the voices of the Southeast Asian diaspora. And as I'm showing that on the screen, my one closeout question before we pass it back to DJ Puzzle to play us out is for both Krysada and Saymoukda, what are you working on next? What's next for you? What's happening in your world? Where can the people find you?
Go ahead, Binley.
So this year it's going to be interesting. I'm going to start battling again, but not like heavily competitively. Breaking is going to be in the Olympics this year in July. I'm very excited, just the fact that it's going to be the first time in history. Definitely not going to compete, but just want to bring it out there. So I'll be competing just different places on the planet. I'm slowly working on book number 3. I'm not sure how it's going to come out to be, but I think there's still some poems left that I need to write about. And yeah, colonial homeland, baby. So working on book number 3, not sure if we'll see what happens there. And then want to do a lot of photography, a lot more photography in terms of the fashion work, the portrait work, but also the Lao community work that I've been doing. So there's a lot on the plate. If you want to follow me, you could find me at Krysada_Binley. I'll put it in the chat. That's where a lot of my latest developments will be. And actually, DVAN, Devon's reading apparently in November. So I'll get myself ready for that as well. So yeah, there's a lot going on. Just follow me on Instagram and you'll see a bunch of things.
Yeah, I'm not as cool. I'm not going to the Olympics or anything, but I am gonna go to the
You're the
colonial.
refugenius.
I am the refugenius. I'm actually I'm preparing to go to the colonial homeland, France, next summer. There's this 6-week residency that I received, and so I'll get to work on my musical there. But this year I'm working on 3 different plays. The first one that's it's called Dead Cops in Little Mekong, which was the play that I wrote when I was at Jurassic last November. And I'm hoping to get that workshopped and then eventually send it to some theaters, see if they're interested. And then the other 2 is I have this commission from Interact Theater in Philadelphia, where I get to immerse myself with the Khmer, Viet, and Lao communities there and write a story for them to highlight them, to amplify the stuff that they're going through. And then the third play is it's a play about the environment, and I'll be working with some high schoolers or middle schoolers to see what kind of solutions they have and to help them be Imagineers, you know. And so I'm excited for these 3 plays that I'll be working on this year. Oh, should I put my IG at the...
Yes, we'll drop it all in the chat. Thank you once again for joining us here for Accented Dialogues in Diaspora. Thank you, Viet. As always, we'll see y'all again next month. I think our next show is on March 7th. So make sure you follow @WeAre_DVAN on Instagram to stay up to date. And with that, back to you, DJ Puzzle, to play us on out for tonight on 2/22/24.